Hey guys, this is Keith from Echo Ceramics, and I'd like to show you how to make a one-piece lid jar. So everything's going to be thrown in one item, and then we'll separate the lid from the base. So that's the main part of it. And the only tool that you really must have is a pair of chopsticks. So if you go to any Chinese or Japanese restaurant, and if you get a to-go chopsticks, and you need one with the wooden block so that when you separate it, these wooden blocks make a perfect tool. So you'll see what I mean. Let's get started. So I'm using 2.5 pounds. It's going to be a fairly large box. If you want to make small jewelry boxes, you need less than a pound. 2.5 will give us a pretty good size jar. So there are various shape and size you could do, but best way to start is just by making a cylinder. So I'm going to make my base about 4 to 5 inches in diameter for this 2.5 pounds of clay. I'm going to compress the bottom. Squeeze in, and then we'll go ahead and pull. So the first pull, again, is like a setup pull. Just want to do a nice even pull just to even things out. Since we're going to close this off at the top, you want to make sure you pull inward, not perfectly straight. So you can see every time I pull, I'm going to bring it up and then make it narrower at the top. So nice and steady up to the top. And if you've never done this before and you're doing it for the first time, just make it a little heavier. Don't try to maximize the clay, but make it a little thicker, and that will give you more options when you get to the trimming. So I'm going to do my last and final touch-up pull, evening things out. And I have the opening still big enough to put my hand in for two reasons. One, I want to rib, which is optional, but I rib everything I throw. Two, I want to be able I want to make sure I'm able to take the excess water from the interior. So I'm going to go ahead and make this nice and semi-straight. Maybe slightly taper at the top, like so. I could also at this point clean all the excess off the bat. And then go ahead and remove the water before you close it off. Now once you remove the water, and when you start closing, you're not going to put any more water inside of it. So one of the things that you want to be careful is not to drip water from the top. You just want to wet the exterior and then go ahead and enclose. So there are a number of ways of doing it. You could go ahead and choke the clay by wrapping your hands around like you're choking a person. And or you could lightly pull inward as well. I'm just using middle finger to middle finger, and you gradually bring this in. And then some people like to use either 3-point contact or 4-point contact. When we say 4-point contact, you should make 4 equal distance. Not this way, this will be a no-no, and this will be a no-no, right? You want to make 4 equal distance. And when you're coloring a 4 points, you're actually pushing in this way, right? You're not actually pushing straight in. Because these two fingers, because my wheel's turning counterclockwise, we want to make sure that we put the emphasis on these two fingers that goes in the same direction. These two, on the other hand, goes against the wheel, so we want to put least amount of pressure. These two fingers that goes against the wheel are actually just kind of like a buddy. They're just hanging out and supporting a little bit, right? Now, if you find that you're doing this and you're doing this and you're closing it off, and I like to use my thumb as a mini rib. If you find that you're a little short to close off, don't panic. Just move your shoulder down just a little bit. So watch, if I just simply take my thumb, like so, and just move that shoulder a little bit lower, right? I'm just going to bring down about 1/4 inch, and then I'll just go ahead and move my thumb steady upwards and inward, pressing firmly against it. Not only does it make it smaller, but you could also see now I have quite a bit of excess clay. Now when you close things off, the clay tends to buckle, a lot like fabric. It's gonna start to wrinkle in like so. So you wanna go ahead and rib that out and thin it out just a tiny bit. And that also will will give more clay at the top as well. So I'm gonna even this out just a tiny bit. And as of now, I should have just enough clay to close this off. And if you stop here, you just simply have a bottle. I'm gonna go ahead and close this off by using my finger as one finger, using sponge and my right hand as one point of contact, and then using my middle finger and my thumb. You can certainly use the index finger as well. I just prefer my thumb. And then you can just go ahead and close this off. Don't rush it. When you're closing it, don't close it inward down like this, right? I'm just pushing in sideways. I'm just pushing in. And you can see the rim is still pointing up, right? It's really important that you know the difference. Make sure you're always pressing the rim points upward. That way when you close it, we're not getting the thinnest contact, but we want to get a nice thick contact like so, fingers meeting together. Then we want to invert this. You could keep it, but I don't find that I particularly like this. So I'm going to go ahead and invert this, meaning that I'm just going to push this down and inside of it. So when we get to trimming, if you do this correctly, you should see the point not pointing upward but pointing down. So when we separate the lid from the base, you should see the point on the inside of it. Why do we need to do this? Because if you don't do that, it's very prone to getting a compression crack. So you get a crack right at the top of your lid. So go ahead and invert that. Now, don't worry about anything collapsing, because at this point, nothing's going to collapse. Once you close it off, it's just like a balloon, and then it's closed off. There's no way of this thing collapsing because the air will hold it up. So I'm going to smooth this out. I'm going to go ahead and use a metal rib, stainless steel metal rib, to smooth the top, give it a little bit of shape. And you can do this over and over to get a nice clean line. So you can see the light part of this right there that makes the least amount of contact. So if I just keep smoothing back and forth, the air would actually push that part up because it's probably the thinnest part of this lid, and that way it just smooths out. And there you go. Now, you don't have to have this sharp angle line there, but it does help you determine where the lid and the base is going to be. So meaning the lid and the jar. So when we take the jar off, you'll know where the base is. So we'll use that line to help us determine the lid. And there's a lot more to do in trimming. Alright, so as a general rule of thumb, it's good to mark from this angle right there, that sharp line. You want to bring down at least 1/4 of an inch, maybe a half. And so think about how you want to pick this jar up. Let's say I'm not going to put a handle or a knob in this case because it's small enough for me to grab it with one hand and pick it up, and for most people to pick this up by one hand, right? So I'm going to go down about 1/2 inch. I'm going to go ahead and mark a line like so. I don't know if you can see that on the camera, but I marked about 1/2 inch down. And then I use the chopstick, the wooden block of it. I'm going to use the wide part against the pot and the narrow part to be vertical up and down. Now, I'm not carving away on the jar here. I'm actually going to just shape. So the idea is that you want to shape it. So don't hold the tool 45-degree or right angle to it. Keep it parallel to it. First, just make a contact and just hold. And as you do, you're going to keep putting pressure, steady. And how much should you push it in? You're going to push it in until the stick is even with the line of the wall. So I don't know if you can catch that on the camera. I'm going to keep holding. Now it's just about flush against the wall. So I'm going to hold. And because I want the lid to fit easier, I'm going to just pivot the bottom in just a tiny bit. So what I'm saying is that I'm holding, pushing in. Once it's flush against the wall, I'm gonna over exaggerate here. I'm gonna push the bottom part in so that the lid, the galley part of it, works like cork and it drops in and it'll drop tighter as it fits in. So that's how you do it. And then once it becomes leather hard, you could either cut at the very bottom or at the very top. And I prefer to cut the bottom because I don't like to have the galley part on the bottom half of the jar. So this will separate. So you see that in trimming. And while it's drying, as it shrinks, the air has to be released, otherwise it'll misform your shape. So ideally you want to take a needle tool, stab it on the side. I don't see a needle near me, but you will take a needle. Don't get clever and don't try to do it on the galley part of it. If you do, it'll interrupt with your trimming. Just do it on any place on the body, preferably a little on the lower side because you have to work and trim on it and you're gonna have to even that out anyway. So when you use a needle tool, punch it all the way through, you're gonna pull it out, you're gonna clean the needle, you're gonna do that 2 more times. Push in on the same spot, take it out, and once more. Reason for that is when you push the clay in, you're gonna have to get a tiny piece of clay at the tip of your needle, and when you pull it back out, it's gonna close it back off from the interior. And then it's still airtight. So you wanna ensure that piece is completely removed by doing it at least 3 times. Wire. And there you go. And the rest is in the trimming. Thanks for watching.